Mitchell from Watts to Brooklyn. I'm Sheldon Curry, and once again, I'm here along with my good friend James Mitchell, and we're going to discuss a number of topics in the sports world, but primarily we're going to discuss the NFL playoffs and do a preview of the upcoming conference championships for the NFL. And we'll also talk a little bit about the Baseball Hall of Fame result that came out yesterday and a couple other topics that we think you might be interested in. So thanks for joining us. What's up, good brother?
Everything's good. Everything's good. Hope things are well on your end.
Everything is good. Thank you. Thank you.
That's cool. That's cool. Well, we got another round of playoffs behind us.
Yep. We're down to the final four, two in each conference.
That's right. That's right. And just briefly look at last week's games since it's so long ago. Kansas City got by the Jags. Pretty good shape other than Mahomes getting hurt. And see where that leaves him. Cowboys blew an opportunity to beat San Francisco. Dak played terribly, unfortunately. And Cincinnati, Buffalo was disappointing a lot of people, I guess, the way they performed at home. Cincinnati went up there and took care of business. Their defense shut them down pretty good. And Philly played like Philly's supposed to against a barely 500 team or whatever New York's record was. They dismantled them the way they were supposed to. So now we're down to the final four, man. I don't know if you have anything to say about those.
Not much. You summarized it well. I'll just piggyback on maybe each of your points real briefly. I think with the KC game, as you mentioned, the big thing coming out of there is the high ankle sprain injury to Patrick Mahomes and the concern about his mobility, and we'll get into that as we preview that game.
Right.
Staying in the FSC, I think that was a very surprising outcome, and the trouncing effectively that Buffalo took at the hands of Cincinnati.
Right.
It just, Buffalo just got dominated on both offensive lines, and both offensive and defensive lines, and so KC and Cincinnati will do a repeat of the conference championships, and the NFC. You called it very well. Dallas played a good game as we thought they would, and even though there were some other issues in the game, but Dak Prescott made a couple of big errors and missed passes, and that was the difference in the game. And then, of course, as you said, Philly took care of business.
Right.
So let's move on to the conference championship and NFC. I'll kind of formalize it a little bit. You have the San Francisco 49ers, the regular season record of 13-4, the 2 seed in the conference versus 14-3 Philadelphia. Frisco's 2-0 in the playoffs. Philly's 1-0. Both come in with great defensive, powerhouse offenses. Most people in the world, in the football world, believe these are the most talented teams in football. What's your opening observation?
I think they're correct in that regard. I guess the big question mark is how long will their third-string quarterback keep performing the way he has so far, as to whether or not they're going to stay in this game with Philly. I think Philly would be the favorite going in. I think they're just too dominant on both sides of the ball, and they have an outstanding player, Hurts, this year. He's been just off the charts in his performance. And like I said, San Francisco they're loaded. They're great offensive players, very good defense. And so far, Mr. Purdy has stepped up to the plate and done his job. And that's why they're there. And the Cowboys aren't. So I think it's going to be an interesting game. I think Philly should win it. They probably will be favored. They're playing at home. And I think overall they're the stronger team. And I think Purdy has played well, but he's made some mistakes, but he hasn't paid for them yet. And I think that might change in this game. Philadelphia might be the team that puts more pressure on than anybody else has. They play the way they've been playing. Their defense has been outstanding, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's kind of in vogue for people to talk about very talented teams having all-pro or Pro Bowl caliber players at each level on both offense and defense. You hear that a lot with San Francisco. You hear it a lot with Philly, except many times people don't talk too much about their linebackers as much as they talk about their front four and really their front eight, because they rotate 8 or 9 defensive linemen. and they led the NFL in sacks with 70.
Right.
And then they're led in both of the cornerbacks are all pros. Slay actually is a former all pro, and a lot of people felt Bradbury should have made the Pro Bowl on the other side.
True.
So, and then offensively, as you say, I mean, both teams are high powered. Philadelphia led the NFC in scoring, and I believe San Francisco was either second or third.
Right.
And then, of course, San Francisco led the NFC in scoring defense, and I think Philadelphia was second or third in that. So, I mean, these teams are loaded.
They are.
Like you, I'm even past the point of whether this rookie is going to spit the bit at some point. Part of that is he's playing very well. I'll admit that. But the other side, the other point is I think San Francisco is making sure they don't put him in harm's way.
Absolutely.
And even when they do that, like as you said, there's been a couple of times each of these games, particularly even in the 2 playoff games, where he could have been picked and he got away with it.
Right.
And I think he's going to face pressure. And Dallas puts a decent amount of pressure on him, but Philadelphia's pass rush could be arguably is the best in the league.
True.
And so it's going to be interesting if he can stand up to that and if they can make him get out of his comfort zone. But I'm looking at this game similar to you, that I think it's going to be a close game. And if both teams play to its best, I give Philly the edge, not only because they're at home, but I think the difference is going to be Jalen Hurts.
Right.
I just think Jalen Hurts brings more to the table than Brock Purdy. And since both teams have, weapons, I mean, we could sit here and I'm not one to do that, but we could sit here and try to, compare and contrast, individuals, but collectively, as San Francisco has Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle and Brian Ayuk and a lot of people throwing Juszczyk since he's a good blocker and a good receiver. And then of course, Elijah Mitchell. He gets a fair amount of carries for San Francisco, so we don't want to forget him. And in Philadelphia, you got Miles Sanders, you got Boston Scott and Kenneth Gainwell in the run game, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown. They have Goddard at tight end. And then they both have excellent offensive lines, but many people feel Philadelphia's is the best in the game. That's true. It should be a really good game. Maybe the only thing that would surprise me is if one of the teams routed the others. I don't see it. But on this Wednesday, as we're recording this 4 days before it, like you, I like Philadelphia. You see any other keys to this? A play, a player?
Not really. Mm-hmm. No. And to give Purdy his due, which he deserves, there were times when he was pressured by Dallas and he was able to use his legs and escape. He made some good plays with his legs too. So he's much better than the last guy to be picked in the draft, it turns out. Yeah. It just shows how often that these so-called experts in evaluating talent miss the mark, because he's a pretty decent ball player compared to a lot of other quarterbacks who were chosen ahead of him in the draft. So far, he looks that way anyway.
Yeah, so far it seems to be.
So far.
He has such a small sample size.
Right.
When you look through history at quarterbacks who've gotten off to good starts that either were undrafted or drafted low, there are a number of quarterbacks that after, that entree, they were shown to be kind of average. And so
that's true.
So you never know. But for the here and now, which is the only thing that matters to these teams and their fan bases, he's playing well.
He really is.
As I mentioned, I was going to say, as I mentioned before, both of them have stout defenses, and I really think it's like any game. It could come down to a key turnover.
Right. True. True.
Particularly depending on where you turn the ball over. If you turn it over on your own side of the field, give the other team a short field, or if you turn it over as you're driving to go for a score. And we've seen a couple of those that have just been awful. Saw it Baltimore, Cincinnati. We saw it last week at the end of the first half of Dallas, San Francisco. Sometimes where you make that and when you make that turnover can be a killer. So
and both those teams are capable of creating those types of turnovers too. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah.
That's what they say any given Sunday, right?
Yeah, any given Sunday.
Right.
So I guess we both expect Philadelphia to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl.
I do. I'd be really disappointed if they didn't.
It should be a battle. It really should.
Think so.
It
I
should
think so.
be. And I also think one of the things that should benefit Philadelphia is Dallas. Dallas is more like Philadelphia, and I think they can see some of the things that Dallas did well, particularly on defense.
Right.
And they have a better defensive line. They have more depth on their defensive line. They have better cornerbacks, and so whatever they saw that it would work for Dallas against San Francisco, they probably can enhance that.
Absolutely. You expect them to be able to.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting, and so Philly will be. Go ahead.
Definitely looking forward to it. That's what I was going to say. Yeah. It's a big quite a game.
Yeah. And what do you think about both teams are excellent running teams? Now, San Francisco's running game was slowed significantly by Dallas,
Yeah, it was pretty much
particularly McCaffrey.
Right. That's true. Everybody talked about how Zeke was shut down, and nobody mentioned McCaffrey.
Yeah.
McCaffrey gained like 20-some yards and 10 carries.
Yeah.
So, and other than scoring that very short touchdown, he wasn't all that effective either.
Yeah.
So, like I said, both those defenses played very well. And played up to their abilities pretty much.
Yeah. And, of course, Philadelphia didn't play San Francisco's defense, but they rushed for 268 yards against the Giants.
Right.
And they ran the ball at will.
That's what they do. They've done the last couple of years. They lead the league in rushing, I believe. They did last year. I don't know if they did this year or not, but they're probably close. And that's where someone like Hurts comes into play too, because he's a big part of their rush game at times.
He is.
He picks his spots. Yeah.
And their run game sets up their pass game, particularly the deep passing game, very well.
That's true.
Yeah.
It
is going to be interesting, and I expect San Francisco. I guess D'Amico Ryans is the defensive coordinator. It's going to be interesting how often they blitz Hurts, because if they put a number of people in the box, and whether either an RPO or play action pass, they'll already have some guys there. So it's going to be interesting. That's going to be the kind of the cat and mouse to me. How many chances does San Francisco's defense take, and particularly with guys like Greenlaw and Fred Warner, and then they have the safety. What's his Hufanga, I believe is his name, the All-Pro safety. So so it's going to be interesting to see what type of pressure that San Francisco tries to bring on Hurts.
That's true.
And whereas Philadelphia can usually get there with 4.
True.
So can San Francisco effectively, but San Francisco does blitz a little bit.
They do.
So
it's going to be quite a match. Quite a match.
Yeah. So who do you think is going any key player for you that good or bad, meaning they have to show up, or if they're stopped means victory for that team or the other team?
Well, I think the usual suspects are going to have to stand out on both sides for them to have a chance. The Deebo Samuels, McCaffrey's are going to have to play well. And for Philly, their receivers and the running back, Brown and Smith, is it Smith?
Yeah, Devontae Smith.
Yeah, Devontae Smith. They're going to have good games. And the running game is going to have to be, a significant contribution. They're going to have to play like they played most of the year when they're successful, I think, And they've been pretty consistent, so I don't see whether you got much of a drop-off on their part. I expect them to play well.
Yeah, as I said a few minutes ago, I think the turnovers could be key, as in most games. And so Philly has, with the exception of a couple of games, they were really good at not turning the ball over.
That's true.
And so it's going to be interesting if they can continue not to turn. They didn't turn it over against the Giants. If they can continue to have little or no turnovers, and they can turn over Frisco, particularly I'm thinking more Purdy again because he's a rookie. I know people think that's unfair, but he still hasn't seen everything, and So it's
Right.
going to
So
be
it's
interesting to see how he, and I don't necessarily think he'll be rattled. It's just, I think a lot of it is just sometimes you see things for the first time. At
right.
the speed you
Exactly.
see it, it's not necessarily that you're rattled. It's just like, I
No.
ain't seen this before.
Exactly. It's
And
limited
so,
experience. That's
yeah.
all. Yeah.
But I'll give Shanahan and his coaching staff credit. They may be trying to keep him out of those situations as
I'm sure
best
they
they
are.
can.
I'm sure they are.
Yeah.
And that's a key point that the coaching has been outstanding for San Francisco as it has been. For the last couple of years, Shanahan's been doing a really good job of play calling and scheming and stuff. So it's going to be a good chess match, I think. It really is.
And you want to guess a score? I know you've already picked Philly. What do you?
Nah, I don't get into guessing scores.
Yeah, yeah, it's
I
hard
don't do
because you
that.
just never know.
Yeah, you never
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
Yeah.
But like you, I got Philly. Um,
Mm.
and though we're not a tout program, that the Vegas has Philadelphia 2.5 point favorite. So basically, it's a pick 'em game with
Right.
Philadelphia getting a slight advantage because they're at home.
At home,
And that's
exactly.
about the way it should be. If it was in San
Sure.
Francisco, it'd be about the same the other way.
True. That's
So,
true.
okay. Well, let's move over to the AFC. We have the Cincinnati Bengals, winners of the AFC North, 12-4 in the regular season and 2-0 in the playoffs.
Right.
At the Kansas City Chiefs, 14-3, number one in the AFC West. The top seed, Cincinnati, was actually the third seed.
Mm-hmm.
This is a rematch of the AFC championship game where Cincinnati edged them in overtime last year. I believe it was 34-31. I believe it was.
Right, about 3 points. Right.
A game that Kansas City once led 21-3. We've lamented this before about Andy Reid and Kansas City not kicking that field goal at the end of that half to put them up 24-3, and they gave Cincinnati life
Came back to haunt them.
and came back to haunt them.
That's true.
So,
That's true. I don't think they'll make that mistake again.
yeah. So we know what it's not even an elephant in the room. It's it's out there. Period.
Right.
And that is Patrick Mahomes with this high ankle sprain injury. And to show you his value, but also show you the consternation, this game opened up last Sunday at Kansas City was 1.5 point favorites. And the last time I looked earlier today, Cincinnati was up to 2.5 points. So the line has moved 3.5, 4 points, and that's really rare. And it's also dangerous for the folks that put lines out because you get that in between, and we can talk about that a little later, and it could be disastrous for the books. Right. So it just shows you that the betting public is coming in so heavy on Cincinnati.
Oh yeah.
That they flipped the line. So what's your observation on that game?
I think it's going to come down to Patrick's mobility. If he recovers well enough from the high ankle sprain for it not to be too much of a factor, and he can move around like as close to normal as he usually does, I like Kansas City's chances. The only thing that worries me about Kansas City whenever they play in big games like this is their defense. Their defense is so porous at times, it seems. And I think Cincinnati has a very good defense. Cincinnati's beaten them the last 3 times, which helps with the odds makers quite a bit, I guess.
Yes.
And a lot of statistics, they have Burrow outplaying Mahomes and all that kind of stuff, passer rating and yards per game and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I root for Kansas City. I like Mahomes. I think he's so special. I can't root against him. But like I said, I think Cincinnati has a better defense overall, and they don't give enough credit for their success lately. Everybody talks about Joe Burrow, who's been playing well. But their defense has been winning games in the last several games, especially the game a couple of weeks ago against Baltimore. It was the defense that won that game more than Burrow did. Burrow played, he didn't make mistakes, but he got shut down pretty well. And their receivers weren't as effective against the stifling defense of the Ravens. And Kansas City doesn't have that kind of defense, so it's going to be interesting to see how they match up against Higgins and Chase. And, see how this receiver's name. I can't think of his name right now. Can't come to me.
Boyd.
Yeah, Boyd. And then they have those outstanding running game.
Yeah, Mixon and P-Ryan.
Mixon and P-Ryan. Oh, man, those guys are tremendous. So it's going to be quite a match. And I think it's going to come down to Kansas City controlling the ball more than they normally do, because they're really a pass-heavy team most of the time. And they're going to have to find a way to run the ball, I think, to be Cincinnati and come out victorious. But I hope when Cincinnati wins, I think they have. Kansas City wins. I think they have the ability to. Hope there wasn't a Freudian slip there, you know. But I think it's going to be a close game. Again, as most of the games are, and the team that makes a few mistakes will probably come out victorious.
Yeah, there's been a lot spoken about Cincinnati beating Kansas City 3 times in effectively a calendar year.
Right.
Beat them the last 2 regular seasons and then the playoffs. And that's something to tout. I mean, because Kansas City's been as Cincinnati players like to say for themselves, they've been the big dogs the last 4 or 5 years.
That's right.
But the thing I will say, as impressive as that is, they've been 3-point wins.
Right.
Every one of them has been, I think, twice has been 27-24, then the 34-31, and 2 of the 3 have been in Cincinnati. So it's if you well, go ahead.
I just games like that are toss-ups.
Yeah, they are, and they are toss-ups, and in 2 or 3 of the games, at least in 2 of the games, Kansas City had a pretty big lead, and then Cincinnati made some good defensive adjustments and slowed Kansas City down, and then Cincinnati was able to prevail, and that's important.
That's true.
I think that's a big part of being a good team, hanging in there, but good coaching to be able to make adjustments.
Absolutely.
But I bring that up because obviously as we speak about Cincinnati being 3-0 over Kansas City in the last calendar year, Mahomes is hurt. The betting public and it has Cincinnati favored on the road against a top seed. I think this is the first time in recent memory that the number 1 seed is an underdog in a conference final. So I lay that out to say that for Kansas City fans, they should not feel any trepidation other than hoping that Mahomes can be, relatively healthy.
Right.
But this is a pick-em game. It's the way it's supposed to be. They are at home, and I believe if Mahomes can play a decent game, he doesn't have to be all world. I don't believe he has to be. I just think he has to be effective. And Kansas City, just like in both games, have to stay away from key turnovers. But they probably need to run the ball a little more than they like to. I think that's going to be very important. And I think it will have an effect on the Cincinnati defense and help keep Cincinnati's offense off the field. And the big thing defensively, you hit it on the nose, that Kansas City does not have the greatest defense. However, their defensive line is the strength of their team.
Right.
And if I'm not mistaken, they're in the top 4 or 5 in sacks, which means they can put pressure on the quarterback.
Right.
And particularly with Chris Jones and Frank Clark. And this is one of those games. If Clark and or Jones can break through 2 or 3 times in key spots, that can be the difference.
That's true. And Cincinnati, and I keep saying Cincinnati, Kansas City seems to have the ability in big games of playoffs. Their defense seems to play better than they do in the regular season a lot of times. So they seem to have that reach a different level when they get to the playoffs sometimes. So hopefully that'll happen again this weekend, and they'll play a little better than they might normally.
Yeah, I think what you're saying, your observation is right on. I think there's a reason for that. And I think the reason is that they have, in the entire, this is now the 5th full season for Mahomes. And you're right about their defenses have never really been great. And they do seem to get better as they get into the playoffs and they become, at least decent.
Right.
And I think the reason for that is that the weaker parts of their defense typically gets a little stronger because usually they're like the weak part of their defense this year is their secondary. And I believe they have a lot of young players, first and second year players, who are gaining more and more experience. And so they tend to get a little better. And if the scheme, I'm not a big Spagnola guy, but, I think that's what happens. And then we see people like Frank Clark and Chris Jones, and then some of the linebackers like Willie Gay and Nick Bolton the last few years, they come up big.
They step up.
They come up with a key pick or sack or pressure. And so your point is well taken. It's and I think that's what Kansas City's going to hope for again. It's going to be I expect it to be another field goal game. And then, of course, if Mahomes can't really go, then that's a problem.
Right. Big problem.
Yeah, it's a big problem. But I expect them to get into a serious ball control offense. Now, it's interesting, and I think you saw the game. Didn't you see the game they played earlier this year, Cincinnati and Kansas City? Did you see that game?
I think I did. I can't recall.
Yeah, I didn't see it. I mean, I read the accounts. But I know last year, when they had Tyreek Hill, one of the things that Cincinnati did in both of the wins was that they found a way to try to take away Tyreek Hill
Right.
and basically take away the big play. And there's a lot of discussion about that frustrated Kansas City,
Right.
frustrated Mahomes, who was looking at, big play, big play.
Right. Right.
But Kansas City's deep offense has evolved this year. They don't play that way anymore.
That's true.
So they take what the defense gives, and they a lot more. 2 or 3 years ago, they were almost legendary for the 4-play 80-yard drives.
Right.
Or the number of touchdown drives under 2 minutes. But now it's more typical for them to go 10, 12, 13 plays.
That's true.
So I bring that up to say that might play well now because that's what Cincinnati always sought to do to them.
Right.
And so since they're playing that way anyway, if they can be efficient, the 5 or 6 yard passes and the 10-yard passes, and then good runs with Pacheco and McKinnon and Ronald Jones if he plays. I think
Tony too.
And Tony's a wide receiver. I was thinking, but you're right. They do hand the ball off to him.
Right, they do sometimes.
So,
yeah.
And then Cincinnati, man, they're going to try to run the ball with Mixon and P. Ryan
Absolutely.
and that'll open it up for Burrow to get the ball to the 3 receivers you spoke of earlier.
Right.
So, but I'm going to be really interested to see how this offensive line with the 3 new guys will they hold up against Kansas City's defensive line.
Yeah, right. That's going to be key.
Yeah.
That's going to be key.
Because we though we both picked Buffalo against Cincinnati, one of the reasons I picked them was because I figured, that when you're missing 3 offensive linemen, because they lost a guy each week down the stretch, that would have to be somewhat of a problem.
That's true.
But Buffalo, without Von Miller, man, and then we find out that Jordan Phillips, who's another one of their starting defensive linemen, announced the day after they lost that he's been playing with a torn ligament.
Right.
For
We
weeks.
also forget about Hamlin.
Yeah, and then of course he in the secondary.
Yeah.
But the secondary was because they lost Micah Hyde and Hamlin replaced Hyde.
Exactly.
So they were really they were right.
Yeah.
So when you look at it in retrospect, though Buffalo had kept, and that was the thing I think I got caught. Buffalo had they kept winning. They had won like 7, 8 in a row. So you figured, okay, they're at home.
Yeah.
But I actually think Kansas City's defensive line is going to create some problems, or could create problems for Cincinnati.
Right.
And then I think the flip side, you said it very well. Cincinnati has a very good defense. It's very underrated.
Right.
The upside for Kansas City fans is that Kansas City has an excellent offensive line.
They do.
So again, they should be able to hopefully protect Mahomes.
True.
And I'm interested to see if his mobility is extremely limited, will they have some design rollouts where they make sure they have a couple of 3 offensive linemen rolling with him, so he can still, so they can give Cincinnati different looks,
Right.
and not just have him sit back and throw from the same spot all the time. So,
I think that's going to be the overall determining factor is his health more than anything else going into this thing. From what I look at, if he's up to par, close to par, I think they'll be in good shape.
So I know who you're rooting for, but you sounded a little trepidation. So
yeah, I am worried. I'm worried about this game. I'm going to try to hide the fact that I am, because Cincinnati. I'm really more impressed with Cincinnati's defense and their wide receivers. Obviously, they're good, and I think I was upset that Kansas City let Tyrann Mathieu go. For me, he was one of my favorite players on their defense. And he seemed to be such a key. They always talked about him as being the guy who made sure everybody else was in the right place and things like that. He often came in with big plays in terms of interceptions and sacks and everything else. He was one of those guys that's really a disruptor on defense. And I think they're missing him quite a bit this year.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm all the way. No question about that for Kansas City. But I am worried. I think it'll be a close game. I'll probably pick Kansas City just like I picked Buffalo last week. Out of wishful thinking, but it's hard for me to root against Mahomes and bet against him. I'm sticking with Patrick.
Yeah, I independent of who I would root for, and I would love to see Kansas City for obvious reasons. I love to see him play.
Right.
But I actually, first of all, I guess for me, I look, and I'm not saying this because you said it, the worry is not an issue for me because I guess I expect at this level that both teams are supposed to be teams that can win.
Right.
And sometimes I think the thing about trepidation or worry comes in when you're the prohibitive favorite. Mm-hmm. And you go like, man, what if they spit the bit, as they like to say. Right. And you see something that might make it a little like, oh, man, I know we 8-point favorites or they, But in games, like in the same with San Francisco, Philadelphia, these are the 4 best teams in football.
That's true.
And I expect it to be a good game. I expect it to be a give and take. I don't think anybody's intimidated. I don't think anybody's.
No, not at all.
And so, I mean, though, as I say, and I'm with you, I think Mahomes' health is going to be the deciding factor. Mm-hmm. But he is, until he shows me otherwise, he is just such a great player, man.
He is.
And and if anybody can pull this off, and he had that turf toe that he didn't talk about. Was it last year, or the year before? And he played almost half the season, and that's an extremely debilitating injury.
Right.
And he performed very well. So
He sure did.
I think it's going to be a good game. As a fan, I'm looking forward to both of these games.
Right.
But I'm gonna pick Kansas City to break their 3-game losing streak.
Yeah, they're overdue for that. That's for sure. And I know they would like to get that monkey off their back too. So that could be an even greater motivating factor than anything else. They're tired of the talk, I'm sure. They can't handle these guys. That just Cincinnati and Joe Burrow is their kryptonite. That's what they try to say.
And I understand it, but I will say, as we talked off air. Yeah. I know it doesn't matter, or let me say it shouldn't matter, but in some ways, I think a lot of this, Cincinnati favorites, Cincinnati's 3-0, Cincinnati's their kryptonite, that tends to work well for a very good team. Right. And I can see Kansas City going like, hey, let's go out there and show them. But I think it's going to be a good game, though.
I think so too.
And so I actually don't expect either team to come out complacent. I don't think any team's going. I don't think Cincinnati's going to come out like they think they got it made.
No, overconfident.
No matter what the Mixons of the world talk about being the big dogs.
Right.
I think that both teams got great respect for each other. So
I think so. It's going to be a battle. It's going to be a battle, like it always is.
Yeah.
It is.
But I'll summarize real quick. I think the keys are going to come down to Mahomes' mobility, Kansas City's ability to apply pressure to Burrow, and can Kansas City's secondary hold up if they don't get pressure.
Right.
And I think Kansas City needs to run the ball. And I think if Cincinnati runs the ball effectively, that's going to create some problems for Kansas City too.
Kansas City's in trouble. That's for sure. That's for sure.
Because Kansas City cannot have Cincinnati play a way they played against Buffalo, where they ran the ball well and they passed it efficiently. Because Burrow didn't throw for a lot of yards, about 240 against Buffalo, but he was efficient. He stayed away from turnovers. But Cincinnati ran for over 170 yards against Buffalo.
Right.
So
defense just beat them up.
Right, beat them up. Yeah. Beat them up, man.
Yeah.
So I think if since he runs the ball well, that's not good news for Kansas City. So
I agree.
But I expect, man, we're going to see the top seeds, and it's rare that it happens in recent years, and I think we're going to see both top seeds in the Super Bowl.
That'd be wonderful.
I think we're going to see both top seeds.
I hope so. It looks that way. Yeah. It looks that way.
So, any other comments on this game?
No, I'm just going to sit on my fingers crossed, See what happens.
So from punditry to fandom.
Right.
Oh man.
Absolutely.
Well, I will make one other comment, and I think this can be important just in a depth standpoint and just another person you can put out there, particularly when they go 3, 4, 5 wide receivers, if they can get McCole Hardman back.
Yo, man, that's key. Yeah, that's key.
Yeah, because when you can go with Schuster, Hardman, Tony, I'm forgetting somebody. Valdez Scantling.
Right, Scanlon.
Yeah,
right.
and then throw him, of
Right.
course, with Travis Kelce, of course, and McKinnon out of the backfield. That's some weapons.
Absolutely.
And Tony, did I say Tony? And Tony, yeah. So
Yeah.
I think he would be, and Hartman has experience in big games, and I don't know if they will. He also can return kickoffs.
That's true. That's true. He can.
So, and that could, we didn't even talk about the special team aspect. I didn't mean to omit that. That could actually be the difference in this game because Butker, the Kansas City's place kickers had a relatively inconsistent season. Now he was hurt for a while,
Right.
but he's missed 2 or 3 extra points and a couple of easy field goals. I forgot about him.
That's true.
So Cincinnati's place kicker is pretty solid. He's in his second year, so I forgot about that. That could, in a close game, that could come down to an issue.
True. You can't miss those 30-yard
Yeah, you
field
can't.
goals.
You can't.
No.
Can't miss any extra points. You can't miss them 30-yard field goals. You're right.
No, not at all.
And basically, in this day and age, you can't miss anything from 45 and in from
That's
field
true,
goal because
that's
the
true.
best kickers are not missing. Now, if it's extremely cold, that might, you can reduce the yardage. But,
Right.
yeah. All right, man. So, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Just one more thing about Kansas City
Mm-hmm.
is if they get in a position where they're kicking a lot of field goals, they're going to be in trouble. And that's what's hurt them a lot of times. They get close and, don't convert into touchdowns, and they kick a lot of field goals. I don't think that's going to stand them in good stead.
Yeah, I think, I don't disagree with you. Of course, that sometimes it just depends on what the other team is doing. So,
Right.
it's like if it's a nip and tuck, where a team scores a TD and then a field goal and the field goal and TD, well, you can kind of do the same thing because particularly when you get late in the third into the fourth quarter, time, distance, and score is important. But I get your point. I think what you're saying, particularly early in the game, if you drive 2 or 3 times and you come out of it with 6 or 9 points, that might end up hurting you long run if the other team scores a couple of TDs. So no, I don't disagree with you there.
And I think that's been the case in those games against Cincinnati that they've lost lately too.
Mm-hmm.
They've had instances like that where they would drive and not convert, touchdowns. They're kicking field goals quite often in those games, and give Cincinnati a chance to come back on them and get them.
Well, I think both defenses, when a team makes a good drive, like most teams, but particularly these two, hoping to hold the other team to a field goal.
Right.
I definitely think that's the case. And but now here's interesting. Let's talk about this for a second because you just made me think of something.
Mm-hmm.
We talk a lot about play calling at critical times.
Right.
Okay, well let's say if you're Kansas City and you 4th and 2 from the Cincinnati 5 in the first quarter.
Mm-hmm.
So are you concerned? Would you not kick the field goal in that situation, or would you go for it? Or even Cincinnati for that matter. But
in the first quarter?
Yeah, in the first quarter.
I'm kicking the field goal.
Oh, okay. So your point is you're just saying that if they kick too many field goals, that could be a problem. I got it. Okay, I was wondering. Okay.
No, I'm not.
Because that clouds some of these teams as they go into these games talking about we gotta get 7 not 3, and then you early in the game instead of getting up 3-0 or tying the game 3-3 and keeping it, even though the game probably gonna end up in the 20s, they're giving away 3 points. See, that's my issue with that.
Oh yeah, you should have happened a lot too.
I chasing points and giving up points, man, in a game that's. That's my biggest issue with all of this is that, when folks do that. So, okay, well, I hear what you're saying. Hey, now that
you have to execute on third down for me. You can't execute to get, you close to the goal line. You have to execute to get that first down and keep driving until you get the ball in the end zone. That's the point I'm making. Rather than not doing that and settling for field goals. And a lot of times, like it's the play calling again. Like you might be 3rd and 2. he kicked the field goal. But, you may change it up sometimes. We have a pet peeve about these short yardage situations and everything's a pass from the shotgun position all the time. So I know I rant about that apparently. But that's something that always bothers me. And most teams seem to play that way these days. Everything's shotgun, one guy in the backfield, and you're passing the ball on 3rd and 2. I don't know. So things like that.
I'm with you on that.
I think gets you in trouble, and you want to kick a field goal rather than have an opportunity to keep going and get a touchdown. So I'm looking at that kind of stuff that happens over and over and over again, especially with all these fancy, brilliant, offensive-minded coaches these days. Everybody trying to out-cute everybody else. And I'm used to the old type of football. Give me a full backfield and I'll try to get those 2 yards.
Yeah, I'm with you, and you can do so much out of that too.
Yeah. Even if I decide to try it on 4th, you got to get 1 yard and then it's 4th and 1. Then I got a decision to make.
Right, exactly.
So but anyway.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. I think we gonna always promote that because I'm just amazed at how they see these games. I know. I just shake my head, man. And you said it very well. It's us against you, or whatever you said the last time we was on the air.
I call it me and you football.
Me and you football, yeah. Let's do it. Let's, because
best team wins.
Yeah, that's why and I don't want to beat it to death. That's why I made the comment in the Baltimore Cincinnati game when on that 1st and goal for the 3, and they throw this pass to this 300-pound fullback blocker. I'm like. It's almost psychologically they didn't believe they could score. I'm like, are you kidding me?
It's kind of like a defeatist attitude.
A defeatist attitude. You can almost feel it. That's why I felt at the time. I was like, you got to be kidding me.
I know.
So, yeah. But I guess that's why we're not offensive coordinators, brother.
I guess not. Well, maybe it's why we should be.
I know. We're offensive coordinator criticizers. OCC. I know. We could, man. Maybe we should. Become consultants with about half the NFL and say, hey, if you want to win, read our book and call us in.
Vince Lombardi 101.
I'm telling you. Eddie Robinson 101.
You know all the guys. That's right.
Oh, man.
That's it.
So before we move on to another topic, any fallout might be the strong word. Any observations from the world of the NFL, particularly any of the teams that have been eliminated from the playoffs in the last week or two?
Oh man, there's all kinds of speculation and fallout and critiques and whatnot, especially about Dallas and Prescott. More Prescott than Dallas itself. Everybody just said he just blew the game for them, let the team down. And played horribly, and should they get rid of him, and should they get rid of the coach? There's always a lot of drama around Dallas, no matter what happens, but even more so the way they went out this year. And, Dak Prescott plays as poor games I've ever seen him play, I think. And decision-wise, he made terrible decisions. Those interceptions and his inaccuracy, I think play calling had a lot to do with their ineffectiveness. He just same old drop back. I think he rolled out maybe twice. One was successful, one wasn't. And they don't use his legs much anymore. And I think the offensive coordinator puts him in a position to fail, and then he makes bad decisions and just compounds the situation. So I think there's a lot to look at in Dallas. I don't think people scream for Mike McCarthy to be fired. I think that's ridiculous. He was 12-4. I think he's done a good job. He didn't screw up the plays out there, and he didn't call them apparently. So I think Kellen Moore needs to be looked at. I'm not impressed with him as an offensive coordinator. I think he's too pass happy, and one of those guys who try to impress you with his brilliance and how much he can fool people, rather than putting his players in the best position to succeed. So I think there's a lot of things that went into that. It's just a shame that they lost that game as well as the defense played. And to give credit, San Francisco's defense played very well also. But so it's going to be interesting to see what happens in Dallas. I don't think they're going to move on from that. But he has a lot of soul searching to do, and I think they have to look at what they do in offense and make some changes there. And it's going to be interesting to see what goes
Yeah, it's I think Dax is safe for another year because
Because the contract
his
money, everything
contract
else.
and
Right.
is the cap hit if they got rid of him.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And also folks need to pump the brakes for a second.
Mm-hmm.
People can get so absolutist. I'll say,
Right.
like okay, he definitely played poorly.
He did.
He definitely played poorly. You could argue, as much as I hate to put it on one guy, but he made some critical errors and he missed some throws. And
Right.
in a game
Right.
that was that close and their defense played so well, the special teams came up with a couple of nice returns and they also turned the ball over.
Right.
I mean, just about anything you could imagine. If he just makes a couple of key plays, they win that game. So,
That's true.
but as I say that though, the reason I say they need to pump the brakes about another quarterback, unless they're going to get a Lamar Jackson or somebody like that. Now, I'm not saying they can. He's what you got right now, and you just like you said, you got to put some better play calling, and maybe they need to get another one or two wide receivers. And he might not feel that pressure of having to do some of the things because I think what they say two things, and I'm gonna say three things can be true at the same time. This year in particular, I've mentioned to you on occasion, he's really surprised me with some of his passes that get intercepted because you look at it and say, what did he see?
Exactly.
Every now and then the guy will throw a pass and the guy will come out of nowhere and you're like, wow, that was just a great defensive play.
Right. Right.
But you could just see it, like the guy's standing right there and you throw it. So I don't know what that is. And that's the thing that he's going to have to do some soul. So I think you said that in offseason, some soul searching, because that was not him until this season.
I know, and you especially saw that on that second pick in that game.
Oh yeah,
that was just ridiculous.
Yeah,
like,
when they were driving to go ahead.
Yeah, what was he looking at?
Yeah. And you got to think, and then you got to think the fact that there was two guys on Lamb on that.
Exactly, that's the point.
It's like a minute and a half left. The game is tied at 6. You guys are taking it to San Francisco. At minimum, you got to get 3 points.
Exactly.
And it was 2nd and 2. All that plays for me. It's like you got to. You can't be. He threw a pass like as if it was 4th and 8 with 2 seconds to go in the game, and we got to get or a minute to go in the game. We got to get this first, so we lose the ball, lose the game. And that's what kind of bothers me about some of the interceptions I see him throw.
Yeah.
That risk rewards, like in 2nd and 2, and you choose to throw that pass.
Yeah, that was the first pick, I think, right?
No, that was the second pick.
The second and 2. Okay.
Yeah, that was the second pick. The first pick was in the first quarter when he
Right.
threw the ball to the left sideline. I don't know what he was looking at that one. They both were bad.
Okay.
They both were bad. Because the one he threw in near the end of the first half, Lamb was covered very closely.
Right.
And then the defender tipped the ball, and then I think it was Fred Warner intercepted it. But that wasn't open either, though.
Right.
And then it was 2nd and 2.
Yeah.
And what I mean by open, not just because it was intercepted, is you look at the play as it's materializing, he's not open.
Right.
He's just not open.
Right.
And he threw it anyway.
Yeah, that's the point where I question the play call. 2nd and 2, why throw it?
Well, no, I don't disagree, but I'm saying, once you do decide, you can't do that. Though.
I know you can't do that.
But
once again, the offensive coordinator put him into position. He called that play.
Yeah.
Why not run the ball? You're second and 2 yards. You're second down.
No, I'm with you. I don't get it either because they had plenty of time. And then not only did they not score, San Francisco goes down and kicks a field goal at the end of the half. And that in a game like that, that's deflating.
Right. So Dak made a terrible throw, and Cullen Moore made a terrible call.
Oh yeah. I'm not absolving either one of them. I'm just saying that. But once the terrible call was made you still can't throw that pass.
You can't throw that pass. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. You have to be smart to throw it away or look for somebody else. And they said on that second interception, I heard on Keyshawn's show, I didn't notice it at the time. They said that T.Y. Hilton had a walk-in touchdown on the other side, and he never looked in that direction. It's almost like he made his mind.
Yeah.
Where the play is going, and I'm going to throw it no matter what.
Well, I'm not saying T.Y. Hilton wasn't open on the interception, but the one he was open on was on an incomplete pass. there was on a 3rd and I don't know 12 or 10, Lamb went over the middle and got one-on-one against Fred Warner, who's a linebacker.
Right.
So as great as Warner is, you figure Lamb's going to win that.
Right.
But there was 2 problems with it. Prescott threw the ball on the line. So first of all, that was a mistake. And so the ball never really got there. And so even if, instead of looping it, and if he had just, T.J. Hilton was about 6-7 yards to the left of Lamb, he was running free. Nobody was on him.
That's what it was.
And that's what I think they're talking about. That was a touchdown.
Right.
That's just a touchdown right there. And so in that case, it's like, and it wasn't like, even though there was a decent rush, Prescott must have been looking at Lamb the whole time.
Right.
Because Hilton wasn't that far from him. And I said 6, maybe it's 10 yards away.
Right.
But he was wide open. They were both of them were basically running down the middle of the field.
Okay.
Lamb was more towards maybe not the center, maybe between the center of the field and the right hash mark. And Hilton was running down the center of the field a little bit right of the left hash mark. Wide open.
Right.
Wide open.
Yeah.
Unguarded.
What they were talking about. Yeah.
Unguarded. So when you see that, that means he was locking in on Lamb from the time Lamb came off the line of scrimmage. Now, to be fair to Dak, maybe because he saw him against Warner, yeah, but then he didn't throw the ball deep. He threw the ball in the line.
Right.
Yeah. How you gonna throw the ball 30 yards downfield with a guy and Warner was still on him, though he was trailing him.
Right.
So if anything, you gotta just throw the ball, throw it deep, throw out, and let Lamb run under the ball.
Right. Somewhere only your man can get to it.
Right, because at the time, because Warner was still a step within Lamb, but as the more they run, the more you think Lamb's gonna.
He's gonna,
Yeah, but he threw a line drive. I was like, wow, what is that?
Yeah, I hear you got to lead them a bit.
Yeah, the ball just hit. I don't even know if it hit either of the players. It just kind of.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with him. Something's wrong.
So like I said, he's going to have to really sit down and only he knows what he's seeing.
Right.
And it's just you usually don't see that with players. I mean, well, let me not say that because guys have up and downs. It's just that I don't remember him making those kind of plays.
Yeah.
So many of them as he's made this year.
That's true. He's throwing more interceptions than he normally does.
And I'm wondering if he's just trying to be something he's not. Is it the contract? I want to show them. Is it I want to show them that I can be like whoever?
Maybe so.
I don't know, man. I don't know. But
I think he's going to spend the all season looking at a lot of film, though, trying to figure it out.
He should. Because he's a good quarterback.
He is.
He's not Mahomes and all that, but he's a good quarterback.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's so disheartening for Dallas fans is that as well as they played that game, man.
Yeah, if he plays a normal game.
He didn't even have to play great.
No.
If he had eliminated the turnovers, they win. Or if he hit a couple of those pass plays, they win that game.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, man.
That's football.
That's football. Hey, I'm going to turn my attention. We spent enough time on him, but I want to talk about Josh Allen.
Right.
Because, and I'm not going to get into who's, is Allen, Allen is considered better than Prescott.
Oh, yeah.
But when you talk about spitting the bit, now, a lot of people feel like Allen didn't play as poorly as Prescott. Though it's interesting, and I'm not a big QBR guy because I think sometimes how they calculate this, but it's interesting that they almost had identical QBRs in their losses, a little above 50, which is about average.
Right.
Allen. The biggest issue I had with Josh Allen wasn't so much he threw one interception late in the game, was that the number of times, whether it was his decision making or maybe it's the offensive coordinator, the number of times they would throw long on 3rd and short.
Yeah.
In the snow.
Yeah, that happens a lot. I never understand that.
And Buffalo seems to really do it a lot. And when it works, it looks so fantastic.
Right.
But man, when you throwing long on 3rd and 4 and it's incomplete.
It has to be a poor percentage play. has to.
It is. Oh, it has to be. Yeah.
Yeah, but teams do that a lot. And like you said, it looks great when it works.
Yeah.
Well, I think if you took an analysis of how often it works, you wouldn't do that. Yeah.
So what do you think? I'm not even asked that question because everywhere you look, every time there's a game played, somebody wants to do a ranking. Did he move ahead of so and so? Did he move? And I'm not. You got to look at the totality of a season or a career or a few years. The only thing I was going to ask, not so much that about is he better than Burrow, he's better than not all that. More about what do you think Buffalo has to do? Because they've had 3 straight really good. They're the new kings of the AFC East now. That's 3 straight division titles.
That's true.
I'm just wondering, do you think this is the first step in the wrong direction, or you just think the injuries caught up with them?
I'm just going to say that. I think the first thing is they have to get healthy. As you pointed out earlier, they had a lot of guys out or playing hurt. So if they're healthy, they probably have a different outcome, on a lot of those levels, in terms of offensive line play and things like that. So they have to do that. But in terms of Josh Allen is a very talented football player. But throughout his career, even when he's been very good, he's been erratic at times, at key times sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And he makes mistakes. He'll throw interception or just miss guys or something. So, I don't know. I don't know what he has to do. He has to clean up, some of his passing, I guess his accuracy, if he can somehow. I don't know how you improve that other than practice, I guess. But that's the only thing I say about him. He's as gifted as anybody out there. That's what everybody always talks about and hangs on. He's big, he can run, he can throw the ball through a car wash without it getting wet and all that kind of stuff. He makes mistakes at times and he's inconsistent with his passing in key moments in big games sometimes. But he has to clean that kind of stuff up to be, to reach the next level, I think. But he has all the tools, no question about that.
What do you think about the notion that Brian Daboll, who was his offensive coordinator until this year, he's now the Giants head coach?
Right. I heard somebody raise that.
People have been saying that.
I think that's the key thing. It's something to look at. There's another voice in his head, and different style of play calling, and put him in different situations. And I think that probably played a part. And it takes some time for a new guy for him to get used to, for them to get used to each other. In terms of, just it's one thing to be the second guy in command maybe, and watching somebody play and thinking about what you might do with them, and then actually, having the job of performing with this guy, or making a final decision, and seeing what he really does well and what he doesn't, So I guess each guy came in with little different ideas possibly from what Daboll was doing, at his own visions, and it takes a time to adjust. So that might have played a part in it, along with the injuries, and who knows? He'll probably. I think they'll work better together next year, obviously, because they had a year together. They'll probably both learn each other better. So that might be a determining factor, somebody cleaning up some of those mistakes and things that he's done this year. It's possible. It's probably had some effect. It makes sense.
Yeah, I think your points are good points. I guess the offensive coordinator is Ken Dorsey.
Right.
He's a former going back in the day, University of Miami quarterback who was reserve in the NFL for a handful of years. So, but I think he was already on the staff when Daboll was there.
He was.
I'm assuming if Daboll was the offensive coordinator, Ken Dorsey likely was the quarterback coach.
That's what I'm thinking.
And then he moved up to offensive coordinator. So,
right.
But to your point, maybe just a different voice in your ear in terms of the hierarchy. I went from Daboll to Dorsey. So okay.
He might have played some role. But I think throughout his career, if you look at his career in totality, you see those moments when he's been inconsistent and just makes mistakes at times. And a tremendous talent, no question about that. He's got all the tools.
Okay. All right, man. Well, I think we beat up the NFL enough, and like I said, we're looking at we're predicting the KC. I'm predicting a KC Philadelphia Super Bowl. You're predicting the Philadelphia, and I'm worried KC Super Bowl. No, let me leave you alone, man.
I'm not that definitive.
No, I'm not as definitive, but that's who I'm picking. I acknowledge. I'm not trying to play both sides of the middle. I acknowledge these games can go either way.
And
as I say, the only thing that would surprise me is any of these teams blew the other ones out.
Right.
But I expect these to be field goal games or one possession games, whatever they're called. So.
Right. I'll put my dollar down if Mahomes comes out limping too bad. I'm pulling it back.
Yeah, I'm with you. Time to go home.
Right.
Well, maybe I'll make Andy Reid run the ball 60 times. He'll realize, I got a running game here. So, yeah. All right, man, let's turn our attention. Yesterday, the baseball writers announced that they elected one person to the Hall of Fame who got the 75% threshold. That person was Scott Rolen.
Right.
And, he barely got over the threshold. I think he got like 76.3%. He was a good player. Me and you have talked incessantly over the years about guys like this getting into the Hall of Fame versus other guys that don't look like them.
Right.
And so I don't want to rain on his parade in the sense that, he was a good ball player.
Right.
I guess about a 7-time All-Star, won a number of Gold Gloves. That was matter of fact, that's his calling card to Cooperstown. I think his 8 Gold Gloves.
Right.
He was a solid offensive player. And, so I don't have a big issue. It makes me think of some other guys who are not in. But before I go there, you got any observations of the balloting?
Well, I don't have much faith in the selection process for the Hall of Fame for obvious reasons. I think it's racist, highly discriminatory. It favors guys like Scott Rolen, like you said, was a decent ball player, and his position. I think third base has the least amount of members in the Hall of Fame or something like that.
Yeah, it's kind of been that way. Yes.
Yeah. So there we go. Award a guy like that and ignore a guy like a Bill Madlock. Third baseman, didn't have the kind of power he had. Was a much better hitter. 4-time batting champion.
Yeah, right.
All-around good player. But this guy is off the ballot after 1 year or something like that. Doesn't get no consideration whatsoever. So that just shows you how ridiculous and foolish and racist the Hall of Fame is. The Hall of Fame doesn't mean anything to me anymore, really. It really doesn't. And they probably never should have. Because it's always been racist and it's a lot of foolishness, personalities come to play, what a guy did off the field,
right.
Kind of stuff that has nothing to do with what kind of ball player he was, I mean, Ted Williams doesn't get it unanimously voted into the Hall of Fame. Come on.
Or any of them. How do you not vote for Mickey Mantle, Willie Mays, Henry Aaron? Man, I know, man.
That says enough that you need to know about the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
What it means. It's meaningless. It really is. And now they're putting a bunch of mediocre guys in and leaving mostly black ball players and Hispanic ball players out who deserve to be there, as you document quite well in the book that you wrote. About all these guys, the Dave Parkers and Pence and Bobby Bonds and Louis Tions by the Blues, Maury Wills,
right.
Come on.
Right.
Richie Ashburn is in the damn Hall of Fame and Pence is not. They're not taking that from Richie Ashburn.
No, you hit it, man. You hit it.
Come on.
You hit it.
It's absurd.
Yeah.
Completely absurd. Pee-wee Reese, who I love, being a Dodger fan, was my man. Phil Rizzuto and Maury Wills is not.
Right. That's right.
Come on. Are you serious?
Yeah. Right.
So the whole thing is a lot of crap.
Yeah.
It's political. It's racist, like everything else in this damn country, unfortunately. So why should we expect anything to be fair? I don't. I'm old enough now. I don't have any, I don't fool myself with hoping that, somehow these institutions are somehow going to be fair at some point. They never have been, and probably never will be as long as they're in the hands of the people that they're in. So,
well said. Well said. And you're right about it. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you said Scott Rolen. And I remember him, but I've never thought of him as a Hall of Fame ball player. But that's what the Hall of Fame's come to. It's not just the elite anymore. And given that, there's a whole lot of other guys that should have gotten in here before he did.
That's right. That's right.
It's absurd.
That's
it's
right.
absurd.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
To your point about not expecting fairness and not meaning a lot, good points. I think the fight for those who want to push the metal forward, even though you don't think it's going to go forward anytime soon, is that one, for people to be feted properly, FETE, it's important because I think whether it's from spitting to the line to the President of the United States, when people don't get their just due, it's easy to demonize the group that person is from. And that's what we see all the time, the minimization, the dismissiveness. So, so if you continue, so like the Hall of Fame is not a life and death circumstance, but because baseball is $1 billion industry and the Hall of Fame, when you become a Hall of Famer, there are estimates that your income goes up 3, 4, 5-fold. So even though it could be a crapshoot and all that, and it's not fair, and we could legitimately say we don't care a lot about it, and because we don't trust it. All the people that I think about Minnie Minoso didn't get into, he was dead. Or Buck O'Neill. Think of the money they lost beyond, on top of not getting acknowledged as they should have. So, but you hit it right on the nose, man. And I ain't gonna spend a lot of time because, like you said in the book that I wrote, I tried to talk about some stuff. But before I talk a little bit about Rolen, you got any observations on Helton missed by 11 votes? Todd Helton, the former first baseman of the Colorado Rockies. You had Billy Wagner, the reliever, got 68%. He has 2 more years on the ballot. And then I think Andrew Jones, I should have wrote it down. I remember the first 4. I think Andrew Jones finished 4th at 58%. I think he has 3 or 4 more years on the ballot. Any thoughts about any of them?
Well, those guys will probably get in. The Heltons and the Wagners will get in. Jones might get in, under the regular selection process. And then again, he might not.
Right.
And because you look at guys like, the list is so exhaustive, as you point out quite well. And I keep promoting your book because it's excellent, and you pointed out quite clearly. All these guys who have these outstanding careers, because they're black, they get no consideration at all. They're on the ballot 1 year, get no votes. Bill Madlock, how many votes did he ever get? What was his highest percentage?
Yeah, I think he was a little less than 5%, and that took him off the ballot.
It's absurd. It's absurd. He got a 4-time batting champion, and an outstanding career. He had a third base, and he gets no consideration at all. Al Oliver, and all those guys you point out, it's just absurd.
Yeah.
It's just a continuation of the racist foolishness that we deal with. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't fight for these guys to get their justice.
Oh no, I know you're not.
But
I know you're
I'm
not.
just so frustrated and disappointed.
Yeah, you get tired.
Yeah, I get tired of it. I don't pay much attention to it. That's all I like to see these guys get their due, obviously. And I don't fight and do anything I can to help them come about. But I don't have much faith in it. And it gets more meaningless on some levels, by the year, just because of these guys that they put in and the people they exclude. It's a farce. That's what it gets to be. It really is. It's been there for quite some time now. It's just absurd.
Yeah, and kind of to that point, I looked at now I finally found the list. Gary Sheffield, 55%. He has 1 more year on the ballot, and I don't think he's going to get there next year. And here's a guy, 8-time All-Star, batting champion, 500 homers, almost 3,000 hits. That's just ridiculous. And so now next year, Adrian Beltre, the third baseman, should get in 3,000 hits, almost 500 homers, over 1,700 ribbies. Won, I think, 4 or 5 Gold Gloves, and so they bet not. Yeah, they better not keep him out. He's the only third baseman in history, at least at the time he retired, with 3,000 hits and 400 home runs.
Right.
So he's.
He's got a face ballot Hall of Famer.
Right, I'm with you. I'm with you. He should be there, and it's going to be interesting, man. And I noticed that. Carlos Beltran got 46.5%. I think you mentioned off air. You think he got hurt because of the issue with the Houston Astros?
Right, absolutely. Yeah. They did all that against
for a while. And I think he'll probably get in.
Yeah, I do too. I think after a few years he'll get in.
Yeah, he probably will.
Yeah, and to that point, Rolen started off at 10% about 6 years ago, and he got in. So usually when you start in the 40s like that,
Right.
unless you were somebody that was associated with PEDs, you usually. So Beltran is probably in good shape.
Right.
He's probably in good shape going
I
forward.
think so.
And then the last thing I'll say about these folk, A-Rod got a little under 36%.
Right.
So he and this was his second year on the ballot. That's about what Clemens and Bonds got. That's about what they got. So I think he's gonna probably get the same fate. It looks like.
Steroid crowd, yeah.
Right. And Manny Ramirez was at 33%. This is seventh or eighth year on the ballot. So he's not gonna get in either.
No,
So.
and when they talk about Sosa, who's probably not even on it anymore.
Yeah, no, Sosa is not on the ballot anymore.
Right.
So Sosa, it'll be. Matter of fact, if I don't think Sosa even made the Veterans Committee ballot. Did he make the Veterans Committee ballot?
I don't know.
I can't remember now. But yeah, Sosa was off the ballot. So, but yeah, man. Here's what I want to say just briefly about Rolen. Now, Rolen was a good ball player.
Right.
And his claim to the Hall of Fame is clearly his 8 Gold Gloves. And so, for all the people who are into the defensive metrics and the WAR, that gives him a pretty solid career WAR.
Right.
A little over 300 home runs, a little over 1,200 RBIs. And so, okay, that's fine. But now I want to go back. You very astutely brought up Bill Madlock. Now, a lot of people will look cross-eyed at us talking about Bill Madlock and Scott Rolen because what they do is they do things to dismiss the black guy.
Exactly.
And they don't get into some of the numbers underneath. So I won't bore you, but I want to raise a couple. First of all, Madlock played in a different era. He played in an era where pitching was important and hitting hitting singles and doubles and stealing bases were more important than they are today or during the time Rolen played. So that's one thing. The other thing is that Rolen played in an era where offense was enhanced 15, 20, 25% with the smaller ballparks, the juice baseballs, and the juice. I mean, the offense just went through the roof from the end of the 80s up until the 2000 teens, and Rolen's entire career was in that period. Madlock retired in 87, so you could argue he never played in the enhanced offensive era. But I just want a couple of points because I know people will think we're picking. True, Scott Rolen played 2 more years than Madlock. But here's what's so interesting about when you look at them. Madlock had a 305 lifetime average to 281 for Rolen. Now, of course, the naysayers will say batting average doesn't mean anything. That what means it, you got to look at on-base percentage and OPS and OPS plus. Batting average doesn't mean anything. Now, of course, it doesn't mean anything when a guy hits 305 and wins 4 batting titles and he's black. It doesn't mean anything. If he had been Wade Boggs, it would have meant something.
Absolutely.
But check this out. This is why I say this stuff gets disingenuous. Now, Rolen played in an offensive era, so the numbers were higher. So you would, so he has a higher slugging percentage, he has a higher OPS, but here's the equalizer when these people want to get into these metrics and stuff. Bill Madlock has a on base percentage of 365.
Okay.
Rolen 364. So remember, batting average doesn't mean anything. So still, Madlock edges him in on base percentage. Okay, now they talk about OPS plus is on base percentage plus slugging percentage against the league average.
Okay.
Bill Madlock, who hit 163 home runs a career, he was a solid home run hitter. He just wasn't a great home run hitter.
Right.
He has an OPS plus of 123, which is really good.
Okay.
Scott Rolen with his 316 homers and 500 doubles and all that good stuff. He has OPS plus of 122. So now this is a great equalizer offensively because when you put because see that OPS plus adjusted for league average puts all that into the hopper. So they're basically saying offensively that Scott Rolen with all them home runs and all them doubles more than Madlock, but Madlock's what he did. They were either even offensively or Madlock was better. Now I purposely didn't talk about other things like Madlock struck out 900 fewer times than Rolen. Now put that in your pipe and smoke it. About what does that mean?
Exactly. Well, strikeouts don't mean anything anymore.
Yeah. And Madlock stole almost 60 more bases than Rolen.
Exactly.
Madlock hit over 308 times to Rolen's 2. Now, the last two things, and I'm going to stop this, but I have to say this for all these people that always think that they're coming up with these things and thinking we're crazy and don't know what we're talking about. Check this out. Scott Rolen made the Hall of Fame by the baseball writers, which is supposed to mean it's legit because they always get on the Veterans Committee.
There you go.
Okay. Scott Rolen played 13 full seasons. Now, I say full seasons, enough, maybe 100 games that you could reasonably say if you played well enough, maybe you can get an MVP vote, even if it's just 1/10th place vote.
Right.
He got MVP votes 4 times in 13 seasons.
Okay.
Madlock, who ain't it, got 6 in his 14 full seasons. So Madlock got MVP votes more than Scott Rolen.
Right.
Now, that's a great equalizer because, again, now we're talking about apples to apples.
Right.
His era versus Rolen's era.
Right.
Now, you might say, oh, that's a little thing. Scott Rolen had 1 top 10 year. Madlock had 2. Well, again,
Right.
Rolen's in the Hall of Fame. Right? I mean, think about it.
I know.
I mean, if that stuff don't mean nothing, and then, of course, in the postseason, Madlock was a 300 hitter. Here's the last thing that will blow people away for all these people are into these things. People talk about these slash lines, batting average, on-base percentage, slugging percentage, OPS plus.
Right.
Now, Bill Madlock had 3 seasons where he hit at least 335, was on base at least 400%, 400 on base percentage, slugged at least 475, and had an OPS plus of 140, which means that's 40% above league average. He did it 3 times, which is really good even for a non-third baseman. How many times do you think Scott Rolen did that?
Maybe once or maybe at all.
0.
Don't say nothing.
Now think about that now. 0.
Right.
So now the naysayers will say, well, batting average doesn't mean anything. Okay. So drop batting average and go 400 on base percentage, 475 slugging, 140 plus OPS plus. Of course, Madlock still has 3. Rolen had 1.
Right.
So do you see what I'm saying? So when you put in slugging percentage, which takes into account your home runs and all that other stuff and your OPS plus. So that's why, man, we could do this all day long. That's why this stuff, man. But they'll tell you, well, he didn't drive in 1,000 runs and he only hit 163 home runs. And
Exactly.
okay, well, right. And we could do this all day long, but it just shows you. So, man, I'm done with that. But you said it very well, so I'm glad you set it up that way. But I had to give those few things, man. Anybody listening.
Get some context.
Yeah, you want to look at Madlock cross-eyed. It's like, get out of here with that.
And Madlock's on the ballot, 1 year, and this guy gets into the Hall of Fame.
Right, on his 6th year, and it's,
Right. Get no votes.
no votes, man.
And it
No.
happens over and over again,
No
Al
votes.
Elvis, Reggie Smith, and whoever else.
All of them, man.
Same thing.
All of them. That's why, it's
Bobby Bonds, on and on and on.
yeah. And why? Yeah, it's just criminal, man. And since you gave me a plug, I'll say if anybody listening, if they want to look this up, go on Amazon.com, Kindle e-reader. It's an ebook. It's not the printed copy, even though I have some printed copies. And just look up. Tell me again why these mostly black players are not in the Hall of Fame. Is it racial? Under Sheldon Curry, and you can take a look. Hey, man. Now let's move on to a non-sports topic. It seems that you brought this up earlier off air, that there seems to be something going on with these White House classified documents.
I know. So document here, document there, document everywhere. It just cracks me up. Those squeaky clean Mike Pence, right? He comes up with documents at his house now. But now the Republican Party, they have to scramble to see how they're going to handle this guy. They've been jumping all over Biden and saying there's double standards and why did the FBI do this to him like they did to Trump and all this kind of crap. It's the same. Well, I would say it's the same. They both had documents. Trump had his under some dubious circumstances, like he took them purposely and hiding them and denied he had them. It looks like Biden, somebody slipped up in the oversight and left some stuff behind his office that they shouldn't have left. And Biden's been going to open about, we found these, come and look and do whatever you have to do to find out what happened. So it's two different circumstances. Not supposed to try to conflate it and make it like, Trump's being picked on and blah, 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 all that crap. So now that Mr. Clean has come up kind of dirty, it was the same problem. They're going to have trouble trying to spin this, so they're going to keep on doing it because that's what they do best is keep lying. So that has been comical to some degree. And I think I mentioned to you a while ago about Michelle Obama being on the Jimmy Kimmel show a few weeks ago. She's promoting her latest book. And Jimmy Kimmel was messing with her about it, about whether or not they had any documents. And I think he actually made a joke. He asked him about Christmas, and did they wrap it in their presents in classified documents? And Michelle Obama was quite to the point. She said, no, we didn't have any unclassified documents. And if we did, I'm sure my husband would be in jail right now.
She hit it, man.
Right,
She hit it.
She was right on it.
She hit it.
Which proves the point, it just makes the Obama administration, at least his part of it, look, squeaky clean in terms of all these scandals and crap,
Right. And he had to be.
He had to be, and he was, right.
He had to be.
He couldn't make a misstep, that of the legalese side. So apparently he did, because they looked at everything they could to try to find something on him. They haven't yet, so. It's comical. But these guys with these tests, I don't know what's going on with this. Who's dropping the ball in this, and why they, I guess they take work home sometimes and they, get away from the rigors of being in D.C. But goodness gracious, to be that,
Yeah, it's probably the tip of the iceberg, man. We're gonna find out.
Man, I know.
I think one of the things, and you said it, you kind of summarized it very well. There's a big difference between Biden and Trump because it's pretty clear from everything that's been reported that not only Trump did it intentionally, but then the reason why he's probably going to face some obstruction charges is because he didn't want to give them back.
Right, exactly.
As opposed to Biden's finding out like, hey, do whatever you need. And I think Pence is taking that posture too, like, hey, whatever, you're fine, whatever. But I also think with Pence is that you had mentioned it about the Republicans. I think Pence was on, I don't know if it was last month or whatever, on air talking about Biden needs, the Justice Department needs to put a special prosecutor on Biden.
I think who showed either Kobe or somebody showed a clip of him last night.
Oh, yeah?
Being on someone's show a few months ago talking about documents and then asked him, did he ever take any documents home with him? He said, no, I never did. So somebody sneaked him into his house. He didn't take them.
Right. Yeah, the Democrats put him in his house.
Yeah, the dog did it.
The dog did it. But you made a good point though, man. It really shows you how far either the myth of this stuff ever being secure is just that, a myth, and maybe this has been going on forever, or if these things are falling apart. Because I mean, you think about it, like in these three cases. Where is the oversight of the folk who, because the presidents don't and the vice presidents don't create the classified documents.
Exactly.
They review documents that are provided to them.
Right.
So where is at some point, we didn't get that back,
Right. The librarians do a better job than they do.
Right. It's just, so something's really amiss. And as it relates to, national security and all that. It really, and so.
Possession breaks down somewhere. Somebody's responsibility was to get those documents back where they belong, and they didn't do it, whoever it was. Yeah.
But aren't we surprised? The only one that can do it right is the black guy.
Oh my goodness.
Man, you can't make it up. Made me think when you were talking, it's probably corny. Made me think of the Oprah thing. You get a document, you get a document, you get a document, you get a everybody get a document.
Exactly. Oh my goodness.
Oh man, yeah. So we'll see how this plays out, but yeah, you're right. So man, anything else you want to add before we conclude?
No, just sitting there waiting for Sunday to keep my fingers crossed, like I said. Hope it turns out the way I wanted to.
Hey man, just enjoy the game. It'll be all right. It'll be all right. Something tells me on the Kansas City, because that's the one you have your trepidation. I think Patrick Mahomes is going to show everybody why he is who he is.
I'll tell you. Yeah.
It would not surprise me, man.
No, me either.
It would not surprise me.
He is special.
Yeah.
It really is.
But I'm looking forward to 2 good games.
Yeah, it should be. They should not. I hope all 4 teams play up to their capability.
Yeah, that's what you hope for. I mean, as a fan, you want to see a good game, man.
Exactly.
And teams play well, and the nip and tuck, the give and take, the adjustments.
Right.
And the
good thing is I don't have any money invested, so.
Oh yeah, me either. No, I'm just watching the game, man.
Right. Going up to that degree,
Yeah. But that's one of the reasons the NFL is so popular. People, it's not.
Like crazy.
It's because of all these fantasy leagues and this gambling, man. Is people always got something going, no matter what the score is. Second half betting, prop betting.
All kind of stuff.
It is
Total score.
Yeah, all of it, man.
Anything.
When you get into the big game, particularly Super Bowl, who scores first, who scores second,
That's crazy.
The touchdown passes 2.5, Mahomes above the. I mean, and so the game could be 63-7, and folks are still like, they bet the fourth quarter, or they bet the, I can still go over, I can do this, I can do that, So I think what has happened is that I know people like football, but I think, man, you took away the fantasy leagues and the gambling. And I'd really like to see what those numbers would look like.
Yeah,
They've
got a lot invested in these things.
Yeah, they do, man. They do.
They really do.
And I would think that helps the advertisers too, because they know that eyes have to stay glued to games, because there's still things going on, even if a game gets out of whack a little bit.
That's right. That's true.
Somebody else got something to play for.
Absolutely.
I mean, we just saw a recent example of that when the kicker missed those extra points because, I mean, of course, it wasn't all at one time, but as I mentioned to you before, I believe the over-under was 45.5 or 46. And so anybody that had that game over and you miss 4 extra points, it's bad enough to miss 1 field goal and lose, but extra points are gimmies. So, and last thing, I didn't mean to get in this because I know we don't get into the gambling aspect, but I do want to, I just because of what happened once, I had said it at the beginning of the program, there was a report that the line opened. I say report because I didn't actually see the line myself, but I had heard the line for the Kansas City-Cincinnati game open at Kansas City -1 or 1.5 once Buffalo lost to Cincinnati on Sunday. And I know earlier today it had gone up to 2.5. I don't know if it's going to stay there in Cincinnati's favor. So that's a 3.5 to 4 point swing. Now the reason why that's dangerous is because if the game ends up like, let's say Kansas City wins by 1 or doesn't lose by more than 2, then everybody that bet will win. Or I got that backwards? And it makes me think about, do you remember that famous Dallas-Pittsburgh Super Bowl? And I might have to revisit what I just said, but remember the Dallas-Pittsburgh Super Bowl I think it was for the 78 season, I believe it was. Because Dallas and Pittsburgh played in back-to-back Super Bowls. I think Dallas won in 77. No, they didn't. Who did Dallas beat in 77? Was it Denver? Well, in 78, Dallas and Pittsburgh played in January 79 for the 78 season. The line opened up. I think Pittsburgh was favored by, I believe, 3. And the line went all the way up to 4.5, maybe even, I think it went up to 4.5, maybe even 5. And the game ended up at 4. Pittsburgh won by 4 points. So everybody that took Dallas, let's see, how did that work? So I don't want to confuse me or the audience. Everybody that took Pittsburgh at -3 and 3.5 all won. Everybody that took Dallas at 5, 4.5, they won. Because the game ended up at 4. Right. So so everybody that's what it was. Everybody that took Pittsburgh at 3 and 3.5 won. Everybody that took Dallas at 5 and 4.5 won. And of course, anybody that took it at 4 was a push. And the books, they said at the time, that was the most money Las Vegas had ever lost in a weekend of Super Bowl betting. So when the lines move 3 or 4 points like that, if the game ends up right in the middle somewhere, that's what could happen. So I don't want to repeat what I said about Kansas City and Cincinnati, but I guess the way it works is that anybody that for the book, I'm thinking of the books now. That's how I got it backwards. I'm thinking of the books. Okay. And so if the game ends up in one of those middle numbers between Kansas City -1 and Cincinnati +2.5, depending on the amount of money comes in, the books could take a beating. Right. So they would have to hope that either Cincinnati wins by more than 2.5, depending on how many people bet on Cincinnati, or the flip side. So I butchered that, so don't worry about it. Well, I don't either, but I'm saying it reminded me that infamous for the, and that's what I was really trying to explain. That's why they say they don't like the books don't like moving the lines that much because of what happened that year. If you get that perfect storm, and So anyway, enough of that. So hey, man. So hopefully we'll do this again real soon. Yeah, after the playoffs, so we'll see what happens, and then we'll kind of go from there, man. So once again, I'll say, hopefully you hold your end of the world up on the East Coast. I know you will. You will. I'll try to do the same out here on the West Coast.
I'm sure you will.
Yeah. All right, man. So we're gonna bid everybody. What's the word in French? Adieu. Is that adieu?
Absolutely.
All right, man. Take care of yourself. We'll talk soon. All right, we'll do.